Does pineapple go on pizza?
Oof. I would have to say, true to the Italian culture, definitely no. But pineapple brings a lot of benefits into its natural form. So if you are going to consume it raw,
Yeah,
then yes, natural fat burner,
yeah,
detoxifier. But on pizza, I
not on
would say
pizza.
no.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first episode of Learning How to Live. I'm super excited. I know you're not seeing me, but hearing me. I'll tell you all about that a bit later on. In front of me is the lovely Cindy. So, Cindy, in a second, will tell you about herself, why we're doing this, so the purpose behind this, and then we'll get into conversation, her and I. That said, Cindy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here in this really beautiful studio. And I think it's exciting for me because for the first time I get a little bit of a behind the scenes. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I think the easiest way to start off the story is where it all began. I myself have been a holistic wellness therapist for close to 10 years now. And the beauty of this journey for me is that it has allowed me not just to only tap into my own healing. And obviously, that's most of the time why we do this, right? Is to get the answers for ourselves, but really to dive deeper into how can I assist my community and humanity in the greater good on a healing journey of body, mind, and soul. And the modalities that I work with allow me exactly that. Some of it is specifically focused on how we work on the human body and the feedback that I get from the human body. And the other parts of it is my studies into ancient wisdom, for example, like Ayurveda, where it's a technique that comes from ancient India, 5,000 years old. And we get to learn more about how the food and everything else that contributes to this body, mind, soul connection actually impacts us. And then, of course, the emotional aspects of it, how the human has gone through their own story and how their traumas and their experiences has affected them. And then ultimately taking us into the soul aspect of it to become more conscious. How do we become more connected to our creator? How do we live in harmony with all of life force energy? And really all of that has brought me to where I am today. And I think that is also why I was so excited to meet my collaborators and partners for the Hive-Mind that we started about. I think this year is our second year that we're operating now. And both of them, the one comes from an accounting background, so bringing in the financial wisdom of the business, and the other one comes from ticketing and eventing. And so beautifully, how both of them have aligned with how can we make an impact in the world? How can we gift humanity something in this times that we are living in to really teach them how to live? You know, how do we start this conversation of learning how to live? And I think that's how Hive Mind was created and our Learning How to Live projects. So yeah, excited. I don't know if you want to start with a specific question or.
Yeah, you talk about holistic living, well-being, and all of that. For somebody who doesn't know what that is,
Yes.
how do you make it simple for them? What does that
Yes.
entail? Yeah.
Perfect. Holistic wellness for me, and almost like to keep it as basic as possible so that a child can understand it, is how can I live my best life? And what does that look like? So, for example, morning, afternoon, and evening, what are the routines that I can bring into my life? And what are the little, almost like a cheat sheet, if you will, the cheat codes for life that I can apply on a day to day basis that will give me access into being my optimal self, living my best life. And the packages that we've tried to put together, and we've actually been working with an incredible team of holistic coaches and therapists for the first part of the year. We did a lot of market research, and the feedback that we got is pretty much after COVID, what happened was people had this huge shock to their system of now it's COVID, we're living from home, we're working from home, and we were almost like cut off from everything. And then once people adjusted to that, they realized, oh my goodness, what a way to live, right? Because now for a lot of people, if they didn't have specific chronic illness that they were battling with at the moment, they loved the freedom. They loved the idea that they could spend more time with their families. And the sad part of it was there was no sort of bridge from what happened in COVID into reintegrating back into society. And as a result of that, we as therapists found a lot of people were sitting with things like burnout, depression, anxiety, because they were craving that life of freedom and still wanting the connection of community, but at the same time, you are reliable on, your salary and what you need to bring in every month. And I think that's sort of where we come in as Hive-Mind. We want to really teach people how to live. How do we bring back that perfect balance of time with family, taking care of your health and wellness, and at the same time being in a space of performance, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's holistically the sort of concept that we're working on, is the balance between the two.
As a therapist, what would you say are the biggest misconceptions that people have about well-being? Because as a man, for instance, going to a therapist back then, I've obviously evolved now. But going back then, when I heard the word or term therapist, psychologist, whatever the case may be, I had a negative sort of like perception to that. So I think it would be very interesting to find out what the misconceptions are about wellness and well-being. Yeah.
I think for me, again, in practice, what I have found is the first thing is that people think we have, and I think this is also, we can discuss a little bit more about the masculine and the feminine perception on things in life, but people have compartmentalized certain parts of their life. So when I'm in my corporate space, I have to behave in a certain way. When I'm with my friends at gym, I have to behave in a specific way. When I get home to my wife or to my family, then it's a different character.
Yeah.
And what I try and do is to say to people, can it all be one? Can you be the best version of yourself and have that same authentic expression in all the different aspects of your life? And as a therapist, what I try and do is to almost break that mold of, I have to show up in a specific way here, and then I have to show up in a specific way here. And sometimes what happens is the negative of that is, if you are in a very high corporate job and there's a lot of stress, or if you're the owner of your own business, it's almost like you have to have this persona that I'm not human. Like I can handle anything that life throws me. I'm always on point. I can always, deliver. I can always be this perfect in every situation, which is not human, right? And I think that is where the burnout tends to happen, is because the minute I then get home, then it's almost, and not for everyone, but for most people, your family then ends up getting the burnt out version of you. And it's not necessarily fair on them. And so my aim really is, when I sit in session with people, is how can I best equip you to, yes, be the performer or be the CEO or be the owner of your company or team leader or whatever it is that you are, the role that you are playing, but can you be that best version of yourself throughout the day? So whether you are hanging out with friends or spending time with your loved ones, how do we play with that balance of not going into burnout? And I think that's sort of where I would like to focus in our upcoming sessions.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You speak about burnout, and the one thing that comes to my mind is boundaries. And I'm curious to find out, that how do we then set healthy boundaries in our personal lives, but also in our professional lives?
Yes.
Because I think burnout is a result of not having healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you asked that, because a colleague of mine actually talks about always this phrase of be a yes man, right? Always say yes. I think there's a movie like that as
Yeah.
well. And that is actually so detrimental, because yes, corporate wise, you never want to turn down an opportunity. You always want to be open for whatever life delivers. And yes, a lot of times the best connections that we make is because we say yes in that moment. I know Richard Branson actually says, just say yes, even if you don't know how to do it, and then you'll learn the skill later, which is great. But at what cost? Where do we sort of, like you say, where's the boundary of saying, I have to make sure my cup is full and I'm running at my healthiest capacity and understanding when to actually say that I give myself permission in this moment to say no. And it's not going to be a reflection on me as a businessman to say, I'm actually not the best in my field or I can't deliver, but it just is actually to show my colleagues that I'm being true to who I am. And in order for me to give you the best version of myself in this specific scenario, I'm going to just take a minute.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no for now. I might meet you there in a week from now or in a month from now, but right now I don't have capacity. And I think if we start to communicate with people in our network, so whether it is colleagues or clients, if we start there and we start from a space of authenticity to say, as a business leader, my desire is to always give you my best. But in order for me to deliver my best, I might fluctuate. That some days it's a 10% and some days it's a 80%. And if I can be authentic with you in that expression to say to you as you walk into a meeting, to say, guys, for example, my pet passed away this morning before work. And I was completely prepared for this meeting. But as it stands right now, I'm at 10%. So I'm going to deliver the speech and I'm going to pitch whatever it is that I'm doing, but I'm also going to be open in my expression to say, right now, I cannot give you my 100%. And to sort of slowly but surely start to build that into our meetings and our connections with our clients to say, we are humans having a human experience, but at the same time, we are so much more than the role that is maybe on the label outside of your door. Yes, you are the CEO of the corporation, but you've got a family, or you just had a sports injury, and can we be authentic in that expression to say, today I can only give you a 10%. And tomorrow I might be running on 100 and I can lift the team up again. But can we honor each other in that expression? And I think with our Learning How to Live projects, we've tried to break it down into different packages so that when corporates come to us and say, listen, this is the main thing that we are struggling with, I would like to start with the first port of call is, how authentic are you as management in your expression with your staff? Yes, you want to be the leader and you want to uphold a certain sort of composure, but can you also show them that you are human and that it's okay for them to be human? Because I find that is how we cross that bridge. That is how we start to build really lasting connections.
That's very interesting.
And maybe that is the place to start.
Yeah. I want to talk about the flip side of what you just said. You talk about maybe you woke up, you find that your pet died. You have to deliver a meeting or a presentation. You get to the office and you express everything that's happened. But you might find that there are people, maybe people you are leading, who would not even care about what you just expressed. How do you get people to get to a point where grace is at the forefront of all the interactions that we have? So for instance, if you express something like, hey, my pet died, for somebody to actually have empathy towards you and not look at you in a certain way or conclude certain things about you, how do you get people to show you that side of grace?
Yeah, that is such a beautiful question, and thank you for asking. I think what I've noticed, and this is just in my own practice, in the last 4 years, sort of as we've gone through this transition of COVID and everything else, is humanity is shifting. We are realizing that compassion is the new way of living.
Yeah.
And I often talk to my clients and colleagues about the new earth that we are creating, right? And people can take it in different ways. But for me, when I speak of we are creating a new earth, I would love for compassion to be the way that we lead. And leading by example would be that we first, as a management structure, will have to have a sit down with our team and say, right, guys, we've looked at what the company has achieved, and maybe financially we are reaching our goals and it's amazing. But when we look at maybe the amount of sick days that our staff is taking, or the turnaround time of new staff coming in, that we don't have this contingency of staff being loyal or staying, we've realized that there's actually something else that's happening behind the scenes. And in order for us as a corporation to really reach our greatest good out there, we have to be holistic in our approach, and we have to look at the health, the mental and physical wellness of our staff. And so going forward, what we are going to do is we might start off sort of like an introduction workshop to say, how do we actually navigate this in an office environment? How do we speak to each other compassionately? How do we leave space for when a colleague is not at their 100% today, if they are at 10%? Can we maybe have some sort of support structure to say we have a team of maybe 2 or 4 people, some sort of buddy system that if I'm not at 100% today, that I can tap into my team and say, guys, I need to deliver this by the end of the day, but I'm actually not going to be able to. Where can you assist me? And I think open and clear communication is the way to go. But maybe to lead with compassion is something that corporations can bring in to create this new way of living.
That's beautiful. Back in varsity, I used to say to people, we are the same before we are different. You know, before you are female, before I'm male, we are both humans, and that's our first connection. So people don't realize this, but we actually need each other more than we realize. I wanted to ask you about, because I'm in a season in my life right now where in a couple of weeks I'm getting married. I'm studying. I just opened, this business. So a lot is happening. I wanted to ask you, when somebody is dealing with a lot, how important is breathing?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm actually busy we're doing a 6-week progress sort of process with corporates where we teach them that the foundation of all of life is breath, of course. The first moment that you are birthed into this world, you take your first breath. And as you leave this world, you breathe out your last breath. But yet, people pay so little attention to their breath. And when we go into the anatomy and physiology side of medical, the benefits of proper breathing, there's a whole list of benefits which we can go into. But at the same time, when we look at sort of the spiritual side of life, people also talk about the spirit or the essence of life, or like the life force energy. So we can see that there's this connection, that it's almost something sacred and something holy that we've overlooked through our, industrial era and this advanced progress that humanity has made into science and technology. But we've forgotten that the basics of life, which is the breath of life, has been overlooked. And in one of our sessions that we actually teach corporates there's various techniques, and maybe these are things that we can dive deeper into in our series. But one of the basic things is that people actually understand, or they've been taught that when you breathe, and you can practice it as I say this, do you breathe and you feel your lungs rising? So breathe, or do you breathe and your belly is rising? And so the proper way to breathe is actually a belly breath, where you breathe beyond the diaphragm into the belly button. And the idea, and we call it like a balloon breath, but the idea is with the in-breath, the belly expands. And with the exhale, the belly contracts. And actually what happens as a result of that, the message that gets sent to the headquarters of the nervous system, which is here in our solar plexus, just underneath the rib cage, is we go from fight or flight, which is our sympathetic nervous system, to rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic. So you can think of the word paralyzed, parasympathetic. And that is what gets lost. People think shallow breathing, because the more stressed you become, you're running in your day, you're so active, you think you're breathing, right? But actually, the more shallow the breath, the more signals are being sent to the nervous system that I'm being chased by a lion. And people are not performing at their best, because it's this caveman mentality that I'm under attack. So you can only focus on one small thing at a time, and you're not holding the bigger concept of the project or whatever it is that you're busy with. So something as simple as teaching your staff and your executives how to do proper breath work in the mornings, whether it is before a meeting, so that everyone can be clear and open, and they've sort of put their morning behind them, whatever it is that happened. They might have had an argument with a child or a spouse on their way to the office. So can we just take a moment to put that aside? Can we breathe and actually be present in this moment? And then once my brain is clear and alert, my neurons are firing like they should, and I can come up with creative solutions. So breath, I always bring in as the very first port of call with our packages. And then from there, flow into the rest of the holistic offerings that we do have.
Yeah. As a therapist, do you deal with just the particular set of problems, or do you deal with everything that comes?
Everything, really. I think I have chosen to specialize in women's wellness, specifically because of my own health and wellness journey with my hormones and issues that I've had in my own personal life. But so there was a lot of learning from me in that aspect. But inevitably, we as women are connectors. We bring communities together. We're always nurturing each other's children or elderly or giving each other advice. So it's one thing that flows into another. So anything from relationship counseling to physical wellness to movement to breath to understanding your deeper purpose to life to lifestyle guidance of bringing balance into life. So really everything. But I think the golden thread of it is, for me, is that we are all human. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you come through. We all have a story. And somehow, as humans, there's always a bit of trauma involved. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've been in a severe traumatic experience.
Right.
Sometimes it can be something like not receiving the love and the affirmations and the praise that you felt that you were worthy of as a child. Can be as traumatic as a child who has gone through physical abuse. And just knowing and understanding that we are all human and we are all going through our own version of trauma can bring that compassion in again to say that I loved what you said, that we are all the same before we are different. Before we are different.
100%.
Yes. Yeah.
This is so beautiful. I'm learning so much.
Thank you.
I'm learning so much. I actually just pictured a scenario that somebody told me about. They were saying that they perform so well at work, so high performer. Now, what just happened is they broke up with their partner, very long-term relationship, broke up with their partner. Performance has now dwindled. They started isolating, so avoiding friends, avoiding colleagues, and so on and so forth. So it's like this person is now living, in their own planet, isolating themselves from everybody. Such situations, is it something that people can come to you regarding and say, listen, this is what's happening in my life? How can we combat that?
Definitely. I think, and again, this principle of learning how to live that we try and bring in for Hive-Mind is we want everyone to understand that it's okay to be human. And if we can bring it into the corporate environment, which is where most of the chronic illness, I would say, originates, is this illusion that it's not safe for me to show my human side or my vulnerability when I am in a corporate space. And then people can tend to deal with it differently. They can either push themselves even harder, which means they're going to complete burnout, or they can withdraw, like your friend, and go into a space of depression. But both are coming from an unhealthy space. So if we can have the understanding that we give each other permission, so not just as the management team, but as colleagues, can I give you permission to be human and to show me your vulnerability and your humanity? And knowing that next time I go through something, you will show me the exact same amount of compassion and grace. And if we start there, that's, I think, when we soften and we open and we realize that there's certain things, and again, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun now with maybe this is a later episode that we can dive deeper, but what I have found in my 10 years as a therapist is the every single trigger for illness in the body starts with emotion. And this has been trial and error over and over and over for me in every single session is someone goes through some sort of experience, whether it is a breakup or a pet that passes away or a loved one that passes away, a car accident or something traumatic that triggers an emotion in the body. But we come from a society where, and I think especially, and I mean with women it might be different because we tend to learn how to express, but with men there's this thing of cowboys don't cry, And the moment that trauma then occurs in the body and that emotion is shut down or suppressed, it gets stuck as an energy form in the body. So, for example, when I did my thesis on diabetes, it was 200 hours of in depth study into that. Every single case, every single one, was as a result of a trauma that a person went through. And in that moment, they felt that their joy was taken away from them. And if we think of the symbolism of sugar, right? As a child, like whether it's an ice cream or a lollipop or a whatever, candy floss, whatever your thing was, the moment you enjoy that ice cream, it brings joy. It's this overwhelm of, I'm joyful, I'm blissful. And as an adult, that sweetness of life is connected to joy. So the moment we lose our joy, so our joy centers are in the liver and the pancreas, and the body then sees it as my joy has been removed. Therefore, my insulin levels drop and they stop to function as they should. And the body's not performing because we have not had an opportunity to express what is actually creating that grief. And so, whether it is maybe losing a loved one and just saying to your colleagues, listen, guys, my joy has been taken away from me and I need time to actually just integrate back into society. And you will find most people will take maybe a day or two to go to the funeral and maybe rest at home. But day 3, 4, they're expected to be back in the office and operate. But they're not okay. And so what happens is that grief is then suppressed. Fast forward a couple of months, now they become diabetic stage 2. Fast forward a couple of years, maybe it expresses itself into diabetes like type 1, where, it's difficult to return from that. And yes, there is genetics and so many other things that we can go into, but ultimately, my foundings have been trauma comes from a space of emotions that are blocked and not giving ourselves permission or others permission to express. And the long-term effect is chronic illness.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Wow. Very interesting conversation, I think, Cindy. And I think it's safe to say that this is what people should expect with the coming episodes, just delving into a plethora of topics. I think on a lighter note, I want to ask you about food.
Yes. Oh, love food.
My fiance right now, she's fasting. So she's been doing the Daniel fast.
Beautiful.
Right. It's been very interesting. And she's been sharing with me that her entire body has changed. So how she feels has changed completely. She's not a morning person. I'm the morning person. She's the night person, the evening person, right? But she's been waking up with more energy. Her mood have changed entirely. Is there a connection between food, nutrients, and our moods as people?
Yes, and it's such a beautiful thing for the two of you to do and experience before you enter into this beautiful marital bliss. The biggest thing that I would like people to take away from this question today is that every single thing that we put into our bodies has an energy. So whether you see it as you look at the actual science side of it, so the atoms and the content that goes into it, or just believing that sometimes, as you bless your food before you eat it, there's this energy exchange that happens with it. And oftentimes I find that in the moments when we are grateful for what we are putting into our bodies, we take a moment and we pause, and whether you pray over your food or you just say a blessing or you just have gratitude in your heart, there's this resonance that creates a loving experience that gets sent into the food, so that energy of blessing. And at the same time, you find when people are rushing and they're quickly stopping at the drive-through at McDonald's and just grabbing a burger, not to diss McDonald's, but because of the disconnect is the unconsciousness behind it, it's therefore rushed. So the burger is almost inhaled into the physical body. So there's this disconnect between, first of all, what is my relationship to food? Am I constantly in a space of pausing, really thinking of, wow, I'm taking a moment to be grateful that the person who planted it made sure that it grew beautifully, that it's fresh, that it was harvested in a loving way, and I now have it on my plate? Or am I just literally scoffing my food and inhaling it? So that's the first thing. The second thing, we do unfortunately live in a world where convenience is key.
Yeah.
And that means we don't all have a veggie garden. We don't all blessed to have a veggie garden in the back to say, I'm going to quickly harvest my fresh goods and then put it onto the table. So that requires a lot of consciousness to say, if I want to optimize this human experience, can I be so loving with myself? And I mean, self-love is another topic all on
Right.
its own. But can I, in that moment, be discerning to say, what will be the most value for my body? Am I going to drink a can of Coke? Or am I going to make myself a herbal tea that I know will actually detox my body? And so it's the chemicals, first of all, or the toxins that's in the food that we eat. And secondly, that energetic connection that we have to the food. And that is always the first place to start. And then from there, I think one of the other podcasts that we can go into is body types, because different body types have different reactions to different foods. And we should also be having a lot more or a lot less of things. So those are all things that we can dive into. But to touch on the point of fasting, what I've found over the years is the best form of detox is a fast. Whether you do an intermittent fast, so that means maybe skipping 1 or 2 meals in a day, or whether you have a dedicated time that you set aside to only focus on replenishing minerals in your body with maybe herbal teas and water with minerals, and setting time aside to really contemplate life. What happens on an anatomy, the physical side effects in the body, is the body starts to naturally detox. And a lot of the impurities that we get into our system goes and sits in the brain. And the body then has almost like this cloud, the brain has this cloud of fog that's stuck on the brain because of the toxins and the overdose of sugars and everything that's in the body, that we constantly feel tired, we feel irritated, we can't think straight. We find that we might not feel like we're morning people because the body's still digesting the previous night's meal. And when we go into an intermittent fast or a longer fast, we naturally allow the brain and the rest of the body to detox. Therefore, we have clarity and energy, and we just feel so in alignment with life force energy flowing into the body. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend a fast, whether it's an intermittent or obviously if you are going to go into anything longer than a 24-hour, there is guidelines.
Yeah.
We can go deeper into that in another session. But it definitely is a recommendation of mine.
Very interesting. I've made the decision to the first 2 days of the week to actually dedicate that to fasting.
Perfect.
Though it's a 6 to 6 fast, I find that it helps me feel good. You know, yeah, I have more energy. You know, my what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm not as obsessed with food as I normally am. You know, there's a level of self-control, you know, that comes into play, which has been really, really enlightening.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I think just to add to that quickly, I'm not sure how much time we have, but maybe for a future session when we do go deeper into food, is there's also this misunderstanding that people often feel being healthy is I'm depriving myself from things that I consider as delicious. There's so much yumminess out there that we can bring into our everyday life without feeling deprived. It's about having that balance of knowing that if I am going to spoil myself to a decadent dessert, then maybe tomorrow morning I just do an intermittent fast, you know?
Balance.
And that's I think also where compassion starts, is can I start here? Can I be compassionate with myself? It's a friend's birthday tonight. I am going to maybe indulge and have a glass of wine or a glass of champagne. I might have 2 slices of chocolate cake. And without having that negative self-talk in the background, because that actually makes the chocolate cake a lot more toxic, then honoring the chocolate cake and saying, this is my treat because I've worked really hard this week. And I often do it for myself. If I've had a hard week, I will drive down to the bakery and choose whatever, maybe a nice decadent carrot cake or whatever, and say, right, this is my reward. And in that moment, blessing the carrot cake and saying, this is my reward, and therefore raising the vibrational frequency of the decadence that I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
So not having this negative thing of I'm punishing myself because, I had that extra slice of cake yesterday.
Interesting.
So also shifting from a system of punishment
Yeah.
into a can I have compassion and
Yeah.
can this be a blessing for my body? Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. I think we can wrap it up. That was episode 1. This was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to say anything in closing.
Yes, I think, guys, if you are going to follow us on this journey, please make sure it is www.hivemind.co.za. We also have a Hive-Mind page on Facebook. So we have got lots planned for this year, not just our corporate packages, but festivals and community projects, so many things. So if you want to tap in, please follow us on those 2 pages. And then, yes, we look forward to collaborate with voiceovers. It's been such a beautiful morning.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the rest of the journey.
100%. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 1 of Learning How to Live. Closing out, Cindy, quick one. Does pineapple go on pizza?
Oof. I would have to say, true to the Italian culture, definitely no. But pineapple brings a lot of benefits into its natural form. So if you are going to consume it raw, then yes, natural fat burner, detoxifier. But on pizza, I would say no.
100%. All right. Until next time.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.